Good afternoon, everyone. How are we all doing today? Excellent, excellent. Enjoying Boston so far, I hope? Wonderful. Well, welcome to Boston, welcome to Charlestown, and welcome to the Bunker Hill Monument grounds. It is a battlefield, and I am one of the Rangers, but as Bill pointed out, I'm dressed a little differently today. I'm dressed, well, I don't know. What are some words you guys might describe how I'm dressed? What are some words that come to mind? Colonial. Always a go-to solid answer. What about you, buddy? Minuteman, I like that word. Ready at a minute's notice. But ready at a minute for what? What's that? Yes. Perhaps terrorist. Depends how you look at it. One man's Minuteman and colonial, maybe even that P word, patriot. Thank you, sir. Is it another terrorist? Or what else would the British possibly call someone dressed like me at the time? A rebel. You have another word? A traitor? Yeah, there you go. So there's these different words that come to mind when you see someone dressed like me. And no single person on the colonial, the New England, the provincial, the terrorist side, if you will, they didn't dress in the same clothes. They all wore what they had. Different frock coats, waistcoats, breeches, stockings. I also have to point out that I'm probably a little bit too clean to be someone, if I was camping here for 2 months, it'd be pretty dirty, but our historic clothing coordinator would probably kill me if I got this authentically dirty, to be honest. But all the people that were here, surrounding Boston, to answer an alarm after Lexington and Concord, they wore whatever they had. Now the other side, the British Army, they all wore wool red coat uniforms. Now they had different facings turned out, different colors to show what unit they were part of, what regiment they were in. But there was one thing in common between all of these men, both colonial and British soldiers. They all carried a musket, similar to this one. Now the British soldiers carried ones almost exactly like this one. This is a modern day working replica, it's just as dangerous as the original, of a brown vest musket. Most British soldiers carried a musket like this. Now some of those colonists, those Minutemen, they might have carried something like this, but they would have had a much more varied variety. Maybe custom-made local pieces for hunting, maybe some French muskets, maybe some old muskets that were over 20 years old from previous wars. But they all had a musket. And when they came to this ground and they decided to use this musket to take lives, risk lives, they committed themselves to a cause that brought them here in the first place. They committed themselves to a cause, to a point of no return. So who were some of the men that were here holding a musket like this? One of them was Peter Brown. Peter Brown was from central Massachusetts, he was 22 years old, and he answered the alarm after Lexington and Concord. Violence had erupted. People were in danger. He comes to help as best he can. Rush in to help surround Boston and make sure no one else is hurt or threatened. Now, after Lexington and Concord slowly becomes the past. In the first couple months after, people are trying to figure out, well, what's next? People are here to help, but if you're a farmer, as most of these men are, what are you doing in April and May?
Sowing.
Planting. If you're here, is your family going to have any food that winter? You're not planting? People start leaving, coming, latecomers show up. Is it a war? What are we supposed to do next? Where am I supposed to be? What is my part? Well, Peter Brown, after answering the alarm, he figured, well, not much else is happening. He doesn't have his own family yet. He doesn't really own his own large farm yet. His duty, perhaps, is to be here to help his neighbors, his community, surround Boston and make sure they're safe. But maybe he's also here because his way of life might be threatened by those British soldiers in Boston. Now, again, he doesn't have a family yet, but his neighbors do. His parents had a family. And maybe he wants the same thing they had, the way of life that they've always known. And maybe that's under threat by this British Army and the policies that they were sent to enforce. So maybe that's why he decided to stay. Join And on June 17th, 1775, he was ordered with his unit to come right here to this hill and fortify it before the British had a chance to fortify it. Now around midnight they show up and they dig for hours right where all of you guys are sitting. The wall would be right here. Some of you would be sitting on it right through those benches. It goes back around in the shape of a square. The rest of you back here would be inside the fort. They dig for hours. And then the sun rises in the east, illuminates this fort. It came up out of nowhere. British sentries see it. British cannon open fire and lob deadly 24-pound balls right here on this spot, and they hammer the ground, and one unlucky man is hit and killed instantly. All of a sudden, reality just set in. All of these men that just got this fort, did they just dig their own grave? Are they going to die now? And for what? What if you have a family? If you're the main breadwinner and you just die, how is your wife and your kids going to survive? Should you die now? What's it worth? Men run away. Do you blame them? I don't. But Peter Brown decides to drop his shovel and pick up his musket and wait to see what happens. His duty to neighbors, his belief in his old way of life, protecting it, is right here. We'll see what happens. But as the day progresses, the cannonade rages on this spot. British soldiers are waking up, assembling, getting on boats, and by midday they're being rowed over here to a beach just a third of a mile away. They're landing and assembling, and throughout Cambridge, the main camp of these colonials, these Minutemen, these terrorists perhaps, they're scrambling, trying to figure out where to go. Do we come? Do we stay? Do we help them? Do we leave these men like Peter Brown for dead? What do we do? Some units show up, and one unit is from New Hampshire. And as they go up on top of Bunker Hill, the higher hill behind all you guys over here, they see this fort getting shot at by huge cannonballs from a mile away. And they see this open meadow. And they're sent down to that meadow. One of the men going down there is Jude Hall. Jude Hall was from Exeter, New Hampshire. He was part of that community, but he was not like most people in that community. He was a stranger because he was of African descent. He was a slave. He had been enslaved his whole life. And he was offered, just weeks before this event, the opportunity of a lifetime. He is handed a musket and told, join up and fight, and you may earn your freedom. Take a musket. Perhaps take lives, risk yours, and start a new life. Be a free man for the first time in your life. Now that's a different liberty than what Peter Brown's fighting for, wouldn't you say? Peter Brown's just fighting to keep what he's always wanted, always known, what his neighbors have enjoyed. But Jude Hall, he risks it all. He gets freedom for the first time ever. A new life. And he hides behind an improvised wall, takes his musket, and waits for further orders. And back across that beach, those British soldiers are landing, assembling, and getting ready to attack. Now those British soldiers, this musket is their tool as professionals. And they're here because it's their job and their duty. One of these soldiers' name is Clement Nicholson, a private in the 38th Regiment of Foot. Now he joined sometime around 1768. We're not exactly sure why he joined, but we can make guesses. For one, it's a guaranteed job, and there's something to be said about a job that always pays. It might not be great pay, but it's consistent pay. And you get food and lodging. The Army's paying, you might as well go. Or here's another way to look at it. How would you like to spend the rest of your life in a small English town making shoes from now until when you're 80? Sound like a good plan for you? No. Would you rather see the world? Would you rather have adventure? Maybe that's what Clement Nicholson thought. And the Army is where he can have adventure with money, food, and a house, a place to stay. Maybe he joined because he wanted to serve king and country. Be part of something greater that serves the whole community. I mean, today we don't bat an eye when someone serves our country. Perhaps that's what he wanted. When he landed, he inspected his musket, his tool of his profession. He had been a soldier for 7 years at peacetime. Camp life, he marched, he did all this work, but now he has to do what he's trained for his entire career. He inspects his musket, but then he adds something else to it. A bayonet. Making his musket into a deadly spear. The main weapon of a British foot soldier. They're not going to engage in a firefight when they come up against this New England, this colonist line. They're going to charge with the bayonet. Stab and kill anybody in their way and keep moving without stopping. That's their job. And as they begin their march, across the field and meadow, up against this fort, all along the line are men waiting who want to be here, who have decided that for what they believe in, they have to be here, and they see no other option. And they're told to hold their fire. Don't shoot to the enemy so close that every shot will hit and kill. When the British come into range, Peter Brown puts his finger on that trigger. Jude Hall puts his finger on that trigger. And when they're given the order, they fire, and they hit a point of no return. They have decided that to kill other lives, to risk their own and other lives, is the only option left. And now that they pull this trigger, there's no going back. They've committed their lives to this decision. When they open fire, so much lead, so much smoke comes billowing at them that men drop by the dozens left and right in the British line. Men panic. They had never seen such god-awful terror. They panic and they open fire without orders. Others decide that running for their lives and facing death for desertion was a better option than facing a certain death at this fort or at that wall. The first attack fails. They reorganize. They can't get enough momentum. They fall back. They regroup. And in a second overall assault, they attack the front, the side, the back of this fort. They charge up in columns. They come up against the wall. And inside this fort, men like Peter Brown had been there since midnight. And now it's around 3 or 4 o'clock. He built this fort. He hasn't seen water or food since dinner the day before. It's hot, it's humid, he's fighting for his life. Do you think he's a little bit delirious perhaps? Probably. Dehydrated, exhausted, low on ammunition. The fire's slacking. There's only about 150 men left inside the fort. Men have died, been killed, run away. When the British finally get the courage, as the shooting at them finally subsides, then grab their muskets and charge up and over with the bayonet going straight at anybody in their way inside this fort. Peter Brown runs for his life. He runs down the hill, runs up and over Bunker Hill. Men like Jude Hall in the field help cover their retreat as they too run for their lives. The British pursue up to Bunker Hill and stop as these colonials, Minutemen, terrorists run back to Cambridge. There's thousands more, too confused, too uncertain about what's going on. Well, now the fight just fell back to them. But no counterattack comes. After about an hour, the whole thing's over. In that hour, out of the 1,500 to 1,800 men from New England that fought here, 300 to 500 were killed or wounded, some captured. Out of the 2,000 to almost 3,000 men and officers sent by Britain here on this field for Boston, almost half, over 1,000, were killed or wounded in one furious hour. Strewn across this field, among those wounded, was Clement Nicholson. He was taken back to Boston, and for 2 months he struggles to recover from his wounds. And then in August, he dies. 3,000 miles away from his home, never to return. But he had to. It was his duty. It was his job. Taking this fort meant the safety of all those back in Boston. If he didn't take this fort, his comrades, his family, or the family of comrades that came here. Even the loyalists they were sworn to protect. If this fort remained in rebel hands, they could have died. And now he died doing his duty, far away from home. Now Peter Brown, he would serve in the militia, eventually live a quiet life as a farmer, live his lifelong dreams. Jude Hall, he would serve for the next 8 years in the Continental Army. He would serve the entire Revolutionary War. He would gain his freedom, but he would rely on a pension to survive and stay fed. And 3 of his sons were kidnapped against their will into the South and sold into slavery. 3 of his grandsons would later fight in the Civil War to finish what Jude Hall started on this field with the musket. So now what we're going to do, we're going to attempt to fire this musket 3 times to give you a sense of the sight, the smell, the sound of one of thousands of these that fire on this battlefield. But when it goes off, remember, think about Peter Brown, Jude Hall, Clement Nicholson, everything at stake and everything they committed themselves to because of their choices before, their decisions now, and how when they pulled this trigger, they committed themselves to whatever they decided beforehand, forever, taking lives and risking lives for an uncertain future that they believed they had no other option. Thank you.
For your safety, I'm going to ask anyone that's on the grass to please go to the sidewalk behind the yellow line. We will fire 3 times, and similar to a car backfiring. If you're concerned about the noise, I'll be giving out a series of short commands. Cover up your ears. There will be an opportunity afterwards for you to speak to our information. At all times, please remain outside of our firing zone. For safety, demonstrator, take care. Prime move. Prime the boat. A simple command you would have heard in the field. Normally there'd be a series of more than a dozen commands given. But prime and load's telling you a great deal. You're getting to the point of no return, and now within the effective range of the smoothbore, which is approximately 50 yards. And during the time I'm talking, it's going to take about 20 seconds, and he's ready to fire. That's how much time it's going to take you to get ready to fire one round. Once again, you're concerned about the noise. Now will be the time to cover up. Demonstrator, take care. Point, fire lock. Stop, fire lock. Make ready. Taking fire. Time to move. 50 yards is not much. 50 yards is where the steps over here on the lodge, just beyond those trees. Try to imagine being on 2 opposing sides where you're facing each other with nothing protecting you. This is typical 18th century. Once you got within that effective range, it's rapidly reload, volley, 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 and we charge one another with bayonets. Once again, demonstrator, take care. Point fire lock. Out fire lock. Make ready. Taking fire. Prime to move. Once it gets to the point where 20 seconds is too much of your life to risk, that's where your bayonet is always commanding. And the bayonet is your primary weapon of choice. You only need 6 feet or less, not 50 yards. Then it's just a matter of who is going to be more skillful. You or the opposing soldier. This will be our final fire.